Hey everybody, it's me again, Randy Ray, here at Driftwood Ranch with the 7 books that I read in January. So it's kind of a slower reading month for me, but 7 books is almost 2 a week, so it's not too bad. And hey, who's counting? But anyway, I'm gonna give these to you in the order in which I read them. And I started off the month of January, and I didn't just read this in January. It lapped over from the end of December. I've been browsing through it for a while. This is called Bound to Please, an extraordinary one-volume literary education by Michael Dirda. And then there's another subtitle, Essays on Great Writers and Their Books. So if you're looking for for things to read, and you can't find enough ideas on BookTube, which is hard for me to imagine, because there's so many ideas on BookTube. I mean, heck, you can watch my channel for ideas for things to read. But also, it seems like I can never get enough of ideas of things to read. And Michael Dirda's essays about the various things that you could read are just so interesting. And he sends me scampering to my dictionary every now and then. Michael Dirda is, by the way, the book critic for the Washington Post, or one of the main book critics there. And he's been called the most well-read man in America. Such people, obviously don't know Steve Donahue. But this was a terrific book. I gave it 5 stars. I'll read to you from what it says on the back. Bound to Please. By the way, Bound to Please is a triple entendre, by the way. Bound to Please, of course, refers to a book. It's bound, okay? And then Bound to Please, it's guaranteed to please. And then Bound, well, I don't want to get into too much of that on here. Bound to Please, which collects 25 years of Michael Dirda's Pulitzer Prize-winning essays, opens with a stirring plea that we read beyond the bestseller list and rediscover some of the great and singular books of the past. And there's a lot of modern books in here. This isn't just about, Ovid's Metamorphoses. Trust me. With easygoing authority, Dirda writes about the classics of antiquity, poetry and translation, the masters of American and European fiction, and countless other subjects. Bound to Please lives up to its name and serves as a superb and superbly entertaining introduction to many of the world's greatest writers and books. And one thing that I did notice about this is a huge percentage of the essays in here are about the biographies of particular writers. And I don't know that the people who are reading these are necessarily looking for the biographies of the writers to read, but if you read a biography of a writer that Michael Dirda recommends, you'll be able to find plenty of books by the person in the biography. But let me give you an idea of the table of contents. He's got it organized by section, which are interesting sections. The first section is called Old Masters, and this is the really old stuff. The Histories by Herodotus, the Bible Tells Us So, Tales from Ovid, the Arabian Nights, a companion by Robert Irwin. Obviously, he's hoping you'll read the Arabian Nights too. Then the next section is Professionals at Work. And we've got stuff about Samuel Pepys here. In fact, I bought the Samuel Pepys volume that he mentioned, Samuel Pepys, The Unequaled Self. I haven't read it yet, but I do love the diary of Samuel Pepys. Section 3, Romantic Dreamers. We've got Victor Hugo by Graham Robb, which is a biography of Victor Hugo. Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and so on. Section 4 is Visionaries and Moralists, an autobiography by Anthony Trollope, which I read last year. A.E. Housman, a critical biography by Norman Page. And in Section 5, We Moderns, Marcel Proust, A Life, which has got recommendations for several other works by Marcel Proust, in case In Search of Lost Time isn't enough for you. Serious Entertainers, Section 6, Hauntings by Vernon Lee. Algernon Blackwood, An Extraordinary Life. Tarzan Forever, The Life of Edgar Rice Burroughs. So, this is not literary snobbery either. This is fun stuff. And it goes on and on like that. I'm not going to read you the entire table of contents. Suffice it to say, there's over a dozen sections in here. There's a couple of appendices, too, that were interesting, or he called them coda. The Dirda Dozen on page 512 and a science fiction reading list on 522 were both excellent, by the way. So I've read several of the books on the science fiction reading list, and I can tell you from experience they're good. So anyway, when I finished that, I decided to try a little historical fiction, and I read The Old Lion, a novel of Theodore Roosevelt by Jeff Shaara. This was good stuff. It almost felt like a young adult novel, like it was written towards someone who was younger than I am. The language in it is just so simple and direct, but still, Theodore Roosevelt was far more interesting than I ever knew. And I'll probably be reading more books by Jeff Shaw. This isn't my first book from him, but it was really good. Of course, the critics liked it a lot. But anyway, you know who Teddy Roosevelt is. I had somebody tell me the other day that I look like Teddy Roosevelt, which I don't see at all. I guess I see sort of, but not really. I don't really look like Teddy Roosevelt. I always thought I looked a little bit like Orson Welles. When I finished that, I read Red Planet by Robert A. Heinlein. I'm part of a group where we're reading Heinlein novels every month. This is one of the Heinlein juveniles, and if you are going to read Heinlein, the Heinlein juveniles are probably a great place to start. I got my one of the avenues in which I found my way to science fiction was when I was in high school and I found a book called Have Spacesuit Will Travel. But Red Planet was really entertaining. It's about a 12-year-old boy. He's precocious. Maybe he's 14, I'm not sure. But he gets sent off to school on the other side of the planet. He's got a pet who's some type of Martian globe. Looks like Winston from, not Forrest Gump, the Tom Hanks movies. You know the one where he's on the desert island. Anyway, hijinks ensue. Let's just say that. It's on the planet Mars. He goes to school. The new headmaster's a jerk. And it turns out he's a much, much bigger jerk than you would expect a headmaster from a school on Mars to be. On my Kindle, continuing with the science fiction theme, I reread a favorite of mine. This is probably one of my favorite movies of all time. Definitely in my top 10. Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan. The novelization is excellent. It's written by Vonda McIntyre, who won a Hugo Award for some of her original novels, and is probably the finest of the... she's as good a Star Trek novelist as there is, let's just say that. But she fills in a lot of the backstory from the movie in ways that I wouldn't have imagined. I'm not going to worry about spoiler alerts. The movie's almost 50 years old at this point. But there's a scene in the movie where they get to Space Station Regular 1, and most of the scientists have been killed, and they find the bodies there. You know, Kirk and McCoy and Savick. In the book, the scene where Khan comes onto Space Station Regular 1 and kills the scientists is actually a chapter of the book, and it's horrifying. It's really intense. Also, they flesh out the backstory of Lieutenant Savick quite a bit, which makes her an even more interesting character. Turns out she's half Romulan, half Vulcan, instead of half human and half Vulcan like Spock is. Which means that, yes, she's decided to become like a Vulcan, but she's struggling with her Romulan ways. The next three books are all from the same author. This is a 5-star novel right here. This is called The Lincoln Highway. Okay, The Lincoln Highway is set in the 50s. It's about a young man who winds up at a reformatory of sorts, a juvenile camp, for a mishap he was in that was accidental. I don't want to go too much further into the details of that. But when he's released, he gets home and he's going to take care of his younger brother, his 12-year-old younger brother who loves to read and loves to travel. But his younger brother has mapped out a route to California that they can move to from where they live. I believe they're in Nebraska. But and it's along the Lincoln Highway. But the wonderful thing about the book is, you know, it takes them a much longer time to actually get to Lincoln Highway and get on the road to California than you could possibly imagine. But along the way, hijinks ensue, and it's absolutely marvelous. The characters are brilliant. There are no minor characters in this. Every character is fully fleshed out. The plot is fascinating, and you feel for everybody, even the bad guys. There's no black and white villains. Well, I mean, there's a villain, and there's a hero, but, well, there may be one character that's straight up a villain. But even he has a unique personality. Even he is fleshed out as a person. After I finished that, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back and reread Rules of Civility, which terrific novel set in 1938 about a young woman. She has a love affair with a young man, and she has a friend that she's roommates with who's in a. No, I'm not going to. You know, I'm having a hard time not spoiling these. I think I'm going to put a spoiler alert in the description of this video. But anyway, it's a terrific book. It's nothing at all like The Great Gatsby, and the characters, you know, like I say, every single one of them are completely, fully fleshed out. It's fascinating. No good guys, no bad guys. Everybody's just human and trying to make their way. Finally, and I've been looking forward to reading this, Table for Two. And you'll notice this one and the 2 books previous to it were written by Amor Towles. I've read everything that he's published so far. It's one of my favorite writers. Table for Two is a collection of short stories. That'll give you an idea of what the publishing company thinks of Amor Towles, because good luck getting a short story collection published. There's also a novella in here, which is a sequel to Rules of Civility, which is probably the weakest part of the book. The first 2 books I showed you, I'd give 5 stars to each of them. This one, I'm only going to give 4 stars to. But 4 stars is hard to get from me anyway. And I know a lot of people don't like star ratings, but that's okay. I know some people do, and they'll probably enjoy this video more than others. Those are the 7 books that I read in January of 2025. In other words, my January recap. And I will be back with another video soon. Until then, please stay hydrated, folks. Stay sexy. I love you, and I'll be back soon.